Was saved by the Bat Kid. You may remember then five-year-old Miles Scott, who had his Make-A-Wish dream come true, dressing up like Batman, saving the city in front of thousands of adoring fans. Now, after years of chemotherapy, we are happy to report Miles is cancer-free. Wonderful ending to that story.
That is a great way to end the hour.
Miles.
You go, Miles.
Oh, that was neat. All right, we're happy he's doing well, and thank you for joining us.
Outnumbered starts right now.
Fox News alert. We are just hours from the deadline for counties in Florida to complete the machine recount of votes in the U.S. Senate and gubernatorial races, with at least one county saying they're not going to finish in time, and half a dozen lawsuits still pending. This is Outnumbered, and I'm Melissa Francis. Here today is Fox News contributor Lisa Booth, national security analyst Morgan Ortegas, host of the fantastic Evening Edit on the Fox Business Network, Elizabeth McDonald, and joining us on the couch today is John Summers, former communications director for the one-time Senate Majority Leader, Harry Reid. And we are thrilled to have you. You are outnumbered and wearing fantastic socks.
Well, very cool socks there. Yeah.
You know,
good to be back. It was a birthday present, you said.
It was a birthday present.
Nice.
As you guys might recall from the last time, I used to work with whales and dolphins. So, you know,
Very cool.
having whale socks just makes sense.
That's
Very cool.
awesome. All right. All eyes are on Broward County and Palm Beach County. In Palm Beach, election officials are working furiously to finish their machine recount before the 3 p.m. Eastern deadline. And this morning, a federal judge resolving at least one lawsuit. The judge granting a limited extension to count the ballots of voters whose mail-in or provisional ballots were initially rejected. Earlier in Broward County, election and campaign officials using gloves to inspect hundreds of damaged ballots. These ballots must be duplicated before a manual recount begins tomorrow. Some Democrats are ramping up the rhetoric as the deadline looms. Yesterday, Ohio Senator Sherrod Brown casting doubt on the legitimacy of the Florida election, as well as others going on around the country.
If Stacey Abrams doesn't win in Georgia, they stole it. It's clear. It's clear. And I say that publicly, it's clear. What they're trying to do in Florida to the gubernatorial candidate and to the Senate candidate running for re-election. And we must make sure, obviously, that every vote's counted in Georgia and Florida and everywhere else.
Whew. Griff Jenkins is live at the Broward County Board of Elections with more. Griff.
Hey, Melissa, they just took the blue gloves off. They had them on. They're inspecting a final 384 damaged ballots that had to be duplicated, and then they'll be done. Everyone thinks they're going to make the recount deadline less than 3 hours from now. But up in Palm Beach County, not looking so good. They're having trouble meeting that deadline. They've had faulty machines, and the election supervisor up there, Susan Booker, not only dealing with a deadline, but also questions over missing ballots, missing because they have yet to be counted. Here is Miss Booker.
I need my expert team, and these are all of my employees, not the county. What they're trying to do is they're trying to go back and look at the counts of each box, and depending on how many we're missing, we can identify which box didn't read. And then we can read those ballots and add it into our tally. But, you know, the likelihood is pretty slim.
Whew.
Tough situation up there in Palm Beach, and also a lot of lawsuits, a flurry of them flying all over South Florida. One in particular, Governor Scott attorneys aggressively appealing a judge's ruling favoring Nelson efforts to allow some voters who had been belatedly notified that their ballots were rejected because of mismatched signatures. They are now being told they will have until 5 p.m. on Saturday to fix them. Their ballots allegedly going to count. If the judge doesn't reverse that decision, it would apply to some 3,000 estimated votes. Melissa, back to you.
Griff Jenkins, thank you so much for that. John, I'll start with you. I mean, this is one area where Americans do really not want to see how the sausage is made. I mean, to hear that they have gone through in Palm Beach County and they're now the count is light. You know, I mean, it just does not inspire confidence. What do we do?
No, it doesn't. And why it's always Florida is, you know, also something that bothers a lot of people around the country. I mean, you hear people talking about it all the time. It's always Florida, Florida, Florida. And in this case, that's not necessarily a good thing. So hopefully they'll get this resolved quickly. They certainly need to. It is important to make sure that every single vote is counted and that the process is done the right way. And then, of course, we learned this morning that they'll have until, 5 o'clock Saturday afternoon to then go through that signature verification process in Florida. So this is going to continue, it seems, for a while.
Is that fair?
Well, look, I think there's a lot of frustration for Floridians and for Americans just in general, because we're now past a week past Election Day, and people want to get to the bottom of this. And I think what's frustrating, too, especially if you look at a place like Georgia, Brian Kemp is up by 55,000 votes there. And for Stacey Abrams to get to a runoff, she would need 18,000 votes. To get to a recount, she would need 16,000 votes. There is only one county left to certify the results. She is not going to get to those numbers, yet she will not resign. She will not concede in the race. And right now you kind of have Democrats speaking out of both sides of their mouth on this issue, because on one side, they're criticizing President Trump and Rick Scott, saying that their rhetoric and concerns over counties like Broward and Brenda Snipes, who has a long history of mistakes, that is undermining the elections, and that is undermining faith in elections. While simultaneously, you've got people like Sherrod Brown in Ohio saying the race is stolen if somehow Stacey Abrams doesn't come up with 18,000, 16,000 votes. So there's a little bit of hypocrisy going on here as well.
But there's a difference between incompetence and a broken system and someone who's actually going out there and trying to prevent people from actually voting. There's a big difference between that.
Nobody's doing that.
Let's hang on one second, because we just want to show people really quickly. We have the president right now who is at the Marine Barracks in Washington, D.C., and he is walking through with the First Lady. We're told that he might talk to the media before he leaves, but we just want to show you what is going on there as he makes his way through, and you can see him greeting folks on the ground there, and the First Lady too, and we'll keep that in mind and show that to you on the screen as we continue. It is hard when you have, or EMAC, I'll bring you in on this one, to have Sherrod Brown saying, if Abrams doesn't win, they stole it, it's clear, I say that publicly, it's clear. That's going to continue on both sides. Yeah, and it's really a shame.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. Is it good or bad to have politicians weighing in on what's going on in Florida? You got to say it's probably bad, because it's already feels politicized. So that's just adds accelerant into the negative mood about what's going on in Florida. I don't think it helps for any politician. Just let them sort it out. The problem is, it feels like Election Day is turning into election week or election month. And if you have Palm Beach County getting a delay in the deadline, why can't the other counties get delays too? And then you have Senator Chuck Schumer saying they should be given all the time they need. I don't know. Broward County has been broken, as to your point, for almost a generation since the Al Gore-Bush recount. It is not edifying. We need to have solid people in there to fix it.
Morgan, when I hear about these things, and the last picture Griff was highlighting for us, they were saying these ballots had gone through and they got damaged. So you take them out and you look at them and you transfer over what the votes had been to another one. Obviously, that makes a lot of people really nervous, because they're looking at it and they're deciphering what they think was intended there. And you say you want everybody's vote to count, but why then is this not going on at this time in other counties? Why were they able to get their ballots through and deal with the ones that got crunched, or did they not count the ones that got crunched in the other counties? And in Broward, they're getting counted, and everywhere else, they're not.
I think the problem even in discussing this is that we all feel pretty hopeless, right? Because at this point, this is in the hands of judges, this is in the hands of lawyers and people that are clearly partisans on both sides. We had on the Palm Beach County supervisor, and she said something this morning that sort of made me chuckle, because they had machines overheat. So they had to recount 170,000 ballots. And she said that they're in prayer mode to finish the recount on time. But the Politico pointed out that she and her staff actually left on time, or even maybe potentially early last night. So there was no working into the hours. So I guess, hopefully the prayer works. But I think that's what's so frustrating about covering this subject, is this is a legal battle. This is now, judges, lawyers, lawsuits. And I think this is unacceptable in a modern day democracy. Yeah. And I think before we get to 2020, what would be great is if we could have a bipartisan panel in Congress, look at election integrity, get together a commission of trusted Republicans and Democrats on both sides to look at it in general, because it's just not going to suffice for every time Republicans win an election for the Democrats to claim that it was stolen, that it was rigged, that the Russians did it. I mean, enough already. Let's have a bipartisan commission look at it. And we don't even, at this point, we don't even worry about foreign interference. We're doing a good enough job screwing it up on our own.
Why not just fire the incompetent people?
Right.
True.
I mean, what about that? I mean, why didn't that happen beforehand here in the situation in Florida? When you have a county where you've had problem after problem after problem, the buck stops with someone. Yeah. You can say that there's huge turnout. You can say that, it's always close, all these things. but then why is it these few counties again and again? I don't know, John. I mean, what would you say should happen? As soon as this is settled, then what's the first thing that should happen so that Florida can get its act together?
Definition of insanity, right? I mean, that's exactly what we're talking about. They keep making the same mistakes over and over again. I think Morgan's idea is absolutely right. Let's get a bipartisan commission.
But on a federal level, you want to do it on a federal level? I don't know. Is that kind of the way?
Well, because you actually raised what I thought was a very good question. Is this a situation where it's just Florida having these problems, or is this one of those things where the votes in other places may not be counted the way they ought to be? I don't think that that's the case, but I don't know. I mean, I just assume the best. And so why not have that panel come in and actually take a look at it? I think that's a really good idea.
Would it be a bipartisan commission, or do you want to get like a company or something? You know, I mean, somebody like, I mean, you know, we don't want the folks that do the Academy Awards and got the, you know, wrong a couple of years ago. Remember that whole fund scandal? But maybe you take it out of the hands of government and you have a technology company or something survey and figure it out and come up with a better solution.
That's probably a good idea. And I also think, you know, as mentioned earlier, just accountability as well. Let's fire the people who are clearly incompetent and shouldn't be in that position. You look at someone like Brenda Snipes, has a nearly 15-year history of getting things wrong, of, you know, breaking both state and federal law in terms of illegally destroying ballots while she was facing a lawsuit about those very ballots. Someone like that should not be in a position. But I wonder at this point, too, I mean, is this just a waste of taxpayer dollars? Because you look at Mark Elias, who's Bill Nelson's attorney. He has previously said for one of his clients that a 10,000 vote lead is insurmountable. And he called on the opponent to step down and not waste taxpayer dollars. So, you know, wouldn't a 12,000 plus vote lead with Rick Scott be insurmountable then?
Well, and I have a lot of respect for Mark Elias, but I will go back into your point in Georgia. You know, when you look at that gubernatorial race, and there's a 16,000 vote difference. So why doesn't she just concede and call it a day?
55,000
really
vote
does,
difference.
55,000. It really does go back to that whole point of making sure every vote's counted. So even if it is
insurmountable, there's one county left. So I mean, at this point, you have Martha McSally that stepped aside when there's something like 170,000 votes still to count, and she steps up and does the right thing. Stacey Abrams is not going to get there. It is mathematically impossible. She is not going to be the governor.
But and this honestly, isn't about her. This is about making sure that every person who voted in Georgia has their vote counted. That's very important. That's the fundamental of our democracy.
In Florida, about votes being emailed in or faxed in. I don't know. I just think, you know, to your earlier question about politicians weighing in, I don't think the Democrats should be weighing in at all when there are people in their party are saying get rid of the Electoral College, you know, at a time when we have these problems continuing.
And we were so worried about the Russians hacking. Here we are with paper and we can't get it done. It always gets me back to, you know, are we better off with technology or old fashioned? It seems like we have huge problems either way. Very reassuring. A former top aide to Hillary Clinton with a warning for Democrats who may challenge President Trump in 2020. Why he says it won't be easy. Plus the showdown over safeguarding the Mueller probe. Now one Republican's threatening to block judicial appointments. Where this goes from here and whether such protections for the special counsel are necessary.
There's been no indication.
Welcome back. Well, there is a showdown over the Mueller probe. Republican Senator Jeff Flake is threatening retaliation after the Senate Majority Leader blocked a bill Flake co-sponsored to protect the special counsel. Listen.
I have informed the Majority Leader that I will not vote to advance any of the 21 judicial nominees pending in the Judiciary Committee or vote to confirm the 32 judges awaiting confirmation on the Senate floor until S-2644 is brought to the full Senate for a vote.
And the Majority Leader explaining why he won't bring the bill to the floor.
We know how the president feels about the Mueller investigation, but he's never said he wants to shut it down. I've never heard anybody down there say they want to shut it down. I think it's in no danger, and so I don't think any legislation is necessary.
Meantime, Senator Flake's co-sponsor on the Mueller protection bill, Democrat Chris Coons, suggests Senator McConnell is covering for the president.
It's ready for action. It's been ready for action for months. And it is a small, simple step to protect Robert Mueller from interference or from unwarranted firing by the president or the now acting attorney general. Why not take this simple step? The argument that it's not needed flies in the face of the obvious reality of a president who takes unprecedented action.
John, real quick, before I get to Flake, Senator Chuck Schumer signaled on Sunday they may tie a Mueller protection bill to a spending bill. or at least according to polling, Democrats lost the last, government shutdown showdown. Would that be prudent for Democrats to do?
First of all, I disagree with that. I don't think Democrats did lose.
Polling showed that, but regardless.
All
right, but would it be prudent is the question.
Yeah, generally the party in power is the one who loses when there's a government shutdown, and we know who runs Washington right now. So, I think with with Flake's position, he's in an interesting place, right? Because, we always joke that Ted Cruz, no one in the Senate likes Ted Cruz. Well, I think Ted Cruz has got good company with Jeff Flake, because Republicans don't like him because they see him as a thorn in their side and as a showboat. And Democrats see him kind of the same way, again, as a showboat who's always going to go back and do what he should have done according to, his party. So I think he's in an unwinnable situation. I think he's put himself there. But on the on the bill itself, I think that is something they should consider. Their whole point about this being, not being necessary right now. Well, I think the president has given signals that there might be reasons that it's necessary now. But one of the things that Tillis from North Carolina said is that this isn't just about right now, but this is about protecting special prosecutors under presidents in the future as well. So it's good for the country in the long term, not just in this moment.
Melissa, is this bill necessary?
I think like most things done by Congress, it would achieve absolutely nothing. So there's kind of no harm in it. But it would be interesting to see Flake bring it to the floor and then for it not to get the votes. I mean, in my mind, that would be classic Flake. So I could see that happening.
So, Emac, is this bill more about Jeff Flake and future ambitions, or do you really think that this is something that he just believes in and he thinks needs to happen?
I think it's both. Can I answer that way?
So yeah, you can answer however you want.
I think that there's a big problem with the bill because it would basically allow for, I think, judges to review the president's hiring and firing, and that's unconstitutional under Article 2. That's part of the bill. I don't think it'll go anywhere. Paul Ryan's saying it's not going to go anywhere. Is it grandstanding? Feels that way? Yeah, right. At this point?
Absolutely.
I don't think it's necessary, actually.
Well, and Morgan, so what are the implications of Senator Flake holding out on supporting some of these judicial nominees? You look at Republicans have an 11-10 majority on the Senate Judiciary Committee, only a 51 majority in the Senate. So what are the implications of him holding out?
Well, that's a great question, Lisa. I would add before I answer that Coons and Flake, this is not the first time that they partnered up. You remember during the hearings, there was a lot of drama about Jeff Flake going back into the caucus room. It was reportedly Coons who was working on him to change his vote. And so we had a lot of the drama. So the two of them have been working closely together.
Right?
For Kavanaugh, yes, for Kavanaugh. So as it relates to the judicial nominees, I mean, listen, Flake's main argument is that I am a true conservative and that President Trump is not. And that's why he's probably going to run against him in the primary in 2020. Good luck with that. So if that is your argument that you are the true conservative, for me, it defies logic that you would hold up these justices. I mean, that is a tactic that I would see someone from the far left, someone who doesn't want those justices confirmed. We also think, I mean, look, we're less than 2 months before the end of the year, before we have a new Congress. So this is sort of his last stand. But I think that this is not something that it's easy, I think, at times to roll our eyes at Flake because he made a big deal of, being the moral conscience of the party, yet he wasn't able to man up and actually run for office. He just quit. So it's easy on one hand to just sort of roll your eyes at him. But I actually have a big problem with this because from the perspective of holding up these judicial nominees, even if you disagree with President Trump as a conservative or Republican on many issues, this is the one place where you're with him. And so this is not something that's going to go away. This is not something we can roll our eyes at. I think that that we have, there's an 11-10 split on this committee. So Flake's vote does count a lot. This is not something that we can ignore or take lightly. His threat is real.
That's a good point. The vice president would have to step in, possibly.
No, I mean,
not on the committee, though.
It's a very sanctimonious move, but your point of the hypocrisy of it is incredible because this is, I mean, it's very credible. It's very true in the sense that this is the one thing for sure that the president has done again and again that has satisfied the group of the party that Flake claims he's a part of.
Well, and John, you've spent a lot of time on Capitol Hill. Where is this all going over the next few weeks before we get to the next Congress?
I think it's going to get ugly. I mean, it's not going to get as ugly, I think, as I had expected it to be, particularly with Democrats taking the House. So I think we're going to see a little bit more bipartisanship. This is a good example of that, right? Because it's not just Flake. It's Thune. You also have Grassley, the chair of the committee. So, so we are seeing a rare moment of bipartisanship in the Senate. So hopefully we can ride that train for the next few weeks and get some stuff done, particularly without closing the federal government, which we're coming up on a deadline there, too.
All right. Well, we shall see if that prediction comes true. We'll see what happens. All right. Well, Michael Avenatti, the lawyer for Stormy Daniels, arrested after an accusation of domestic violence. He strongly denies that accusation. He says that he will be exonerated. We're going to have a live update on that. And it doesn't look like things are getting easier for Nancy Pelosi as she tries to win over Democrats in her bid for the Speaker's gavel. Democrats just may have enough no votes to defeat her. But questions loom over whether a different Democrat can win. We're going to discuss all of that soon.
$1,000 bail and headed straight to the waiting TV cameras to dismiss the allegations against him as untrue and as an attempt to besmirch his reputation.
I have never struck a woman. I never will strike a woman. I have been an advocate for women's rights my entire career, and I'm going to continue to be an advocate. I am not going to be intimidated from stopping what I am doing.
Now, the incident allegedly happened at Avenatti's apartment here in L.A., and police say there were visible injuries to the alleged victim. That person has not been publicly identified. Avenatti's estranged wife said she was not involved, and his first wife defended him in a tweet saying he has never been abusive and, quote, is a good man. Avenatti, of course, became famous representing Stormy Daniels, the porn actress who alleges she had an affair with Donald Trump in 2006 and who was sued to invalidate the confidentiality agreement she signed just before the 2016 presidential election that prevents her discussing the alleged affair. Daniels issued a statement today saying she will reserve judgment regarding what she termed serious and troubling allegations against Avenatti, adding, quote, I do not condone violence against women, and if these allegations prove true, I will be seeking new representation. Now, just 15 minutes ago, Avenatti himself tweeted the following, quote, there is a lot of inaccurate reporting out there. For example, 1, I have not been charged with anything, let alone a felony. 2, Lisa, who, by the way, is one of those ex-wives, wasn't even with me Tuesday, etc. Numerous other facts being reported are completely bogus. Why is TMZ's news standard the new standard? TMZ, obviously the entertainment and celebrity news website. Avenatti, by the way, Melissa, is due back in court December 5th.
Jonathan Hunt, thank you.
I have overwhelming support in my caucus to be Speaker of the House. And certainly we have many, many people in our caucus who could serve in this capacity. I happen to think that at this point, I'm the best person for that.
So you heard it. Nancy Pelosi says she has overwhelming support to be a House Speaker, but opposition is growing among her party's rank and file. Fox News can confirm that 17 Democrats have signed onto a letter saying that they won't support Pelosi for Speaker. That number is critical because it could keep her from reaching the magic number she needs of 218 votes. All this as a growing number of Democrats reportedly seeking a female member to take on the California Democrat. Anti-Pelosi Democrat Kathleen Rice of New York tells The Hill, quote, to those who say that this is an issue of gender, that's just not true. I'm a woman and a lot of our new members are women, and they should not be made to feel that they are anti-woman if they don't want to vote for Nancy Pelosi. One veteran lawmaker who signed the letter, Ohio's Marcia Fudge, told reporters her colleagues have urged her to run for Speaker, and she appears receptive to thinking about it. But California Democrat Eric Swalwell, who backs Pelosi, says now is not the time to take her out of the game.
In these late innings of the Trump first term, that she is the most skillful leader that we have. These candidates all ran on health care. She was the architect of the Affordable Care Act. And if we're going to have any chance at all at protecting what has been lost, we need her on the mound.
John, what do you think? I mean, is there another person who could get enough votes?
Well, that's exactly the thing. I'm receptive to thinking about it. What does that even mean? Yeah. I'm not even thinking about it. So let me think about whether I'm going to think about it. It just makes no sense. So, the challenge is that you can't beat somebody with nobody. And the 17 who have come out and said they're not going to vote for Nancy Pelosi as Speaker, none of them are actually officially coming out and saying that one of us is going to run. So right now, Nancy Pelosi is the only person who's in the game. But we also should remember, and progressives within the party should also remember everything that Nancy Pelosi has done for the party. The Affordable Care Act, I know not everyone here is in agreement with that, but it certainly is something that's popular. And healthcare was the top issue in this election. And she's the one who helped put Democrats in the position to win back the House in 2018. And some of that also comes with fundraising. She's got tremendous fundraising prowess.
Without
and
question.
all of that matters.
Yeah.
Can I get your thoughts on, so I have a theory that Democrats now have this really big problem with progressives on their hands because Democrats, the establishment, always did a really great job of clearing out primary fields, not really having that insurgency on the left. This cycle, we saw a lot of messy primaries, something that Democrats really hadn't seen before. I think that's in large part of Hillary Clinton losing an establishment candidate. Also, the appearance that, the DNC swayed things for Hillary Clinton. And it looks like there's going to be about 90 progressive caucus members this incoming Congress. So how big, well, one, do you agree with my theory? And then two, how big of a challenge do you think that would be for Nancy Pelosi or whoever ends up being Speaker of the House?
You know what? I think it's going to be a little bit of a challenge, but I also think it's a tremendous opportunity, right? Because now we've got a broader set of ideas that we can debate with a bigger group of people. And I think that that's good for our democracy. It's good to have those discussions for people who, no one's going to get everything they want all the time, right? And that includes even the Speaker of the House. So by coming in and laying a stake in the ground that, no, we want someone who's further to the left than Nancy Pelosi, maybe someone who's a little bit younger, they're able to already set the stage for some negotiating that will move potentially some policies a little bit more toward the progressive side.
But will it make it tough for her to hold the line if she needs to keep the caucus together in the House?
Well, yeah, but it's always like herding cats. I mean, you're always going to have,
and you would know from your work with Harry Reid. No, I mean, that's why we love to lean on you during these discussions, because we're always thinking about what would be logical, but we don't know what's really said behind closed doors, and you do. Morgan, what troubles me is that, so you hear about, having two groups within there and that they can exchange ideas and that brings more things to the table. We've certainly seen that on the right as well, when the Tea Party movement tried to do that. But the problem is that in modern politics, you don't get any credit for compromising. In business, they would expect you to come together and work out a solution where everybody gives and everybody gets. You win some, you lose some, and you come together. And what's important is the outcome. And I'm afraid
or the
that
art
now,
of the deal, perhaps?
Yeah, the art of the deal. Well, but I'm afraid now in this political system right now, that's just something that's going to be held against you later. That you gave in on something in order to get something done, and that's horrible for American people.
So let's look at the case of just yesterday afternoon, where there is an example of what you're talking about that happened. President Trump and Van Jones came together, which I never thought in a million years I would see happen.
Possible.
As it relates to prison reform, and this is something that I saw Mike Lee, I believe it was this morning on Fox and on Twitter praising, and so I think yes, it seems dire many times, but never in a million years did I think I'd see the two of them coming together, especially when you have President Trump running as a law and order candidate. So it can happen when people want to make a difference, when they want to come together and pass this sort of legislation. It hasn't been passed yet, but certainly the announcement yesterday. One thing that I think was important in the piece that you read at the beginning, there was a Democrat congresswoman, going back to Pelosi a little, where she said we shouldn't be made to feel, and I'm paraphrasing her here, we shouldn't be made to feel if we don't vote for Pelosi that we're anti-woman. And I would just like to thank congressional Democrat women for making our argument for not voting for Hillary in 2016. I mean, that's what we've constantly heard as Republicans, support the person based on their gender. And now that Democrat women have this argument coming back to them, it's not so nice to receive it when you just want to vote on someone based on their qualifications.
EMAC, we always say let the market decide, and that'll tell people how to do things. And I wonder if so much of this is voters' fault. If voters don't reward politicians that go out there, or if we did make a decision to go out there and reward politicians who brought both sides together, who found a compromise and got things done, then there would be more of them. But they're saying to themselves, we don't get reelected if we don't take a really hard, mean stand.
I totally hear what you're saying, and it's a great point. It's that I think the Democrat voter really doesn't understand how sclerotic the system has become. There are no term limits for Democrats who run committees. So there's a lock on power, whereas the Republicans have term limits. And Nancy Pelosi's been around since the Reagan administration. So is Chuck Schumer. So, you know, and ProPublica, the Washington Post just did an amazing study of what really is going on in Congress. Less meetings. The junior congressmen are locked out of those meetings about legislation. And so, you know, you wonder if the Democrat Party really is truly split right now because they have a really raucous, loud left wing who's now trying to oppose Nancy Pelosi, but she's now getting the government worker union behind her, the teachers union behind her. So she seems to be able to gavel in. So she could possibly still be House Speaker coming
Interesting stuff. All right. President Trump slamming the Mueller probe again today. This as his legal team nears its decision, we're told, on submitting written answers from the special counsel's questions. How many questions they should answer and what the president is saying.
President Trump's legal team nearing a decision on submitting written answers to special counsel Robert Mueller's questions. A source tells Fox News the president and his legal team are getting ready to make a, quote, go-no-go decision on which questions to answer and whether to submit those responses in writing. The questions are said to be limited solely to Russian collusion and deal exclusively with the time period before Mr. Trump's election. Meantime, President Trump is slamming the Mueller probe yet again, tweeting this morning, universities will someday study what a highly conflicted and not Senate-approved Bob Mueller and his gang of Democrat thugs have done to destroy people. Why is he protecting crooked Hillary, Comey, McCabe, Lisa Page, and her lover, Peter S., and all of his friends on the other side? So, John, I want to start with you. So we now have the House and Senate committee chairmen who have said they've not seen hard evidence of collusion. Lanny Davis has poured cold water on the dossier in relation to Michael Cohen. You even have Christopher Steele, the author of the dossier, before a British court not being able to verify some of the veracity of the statements made in it. So at this point, what evidence of collusion do we even have?
Well, that's a great question, and that's all in Robert Mueller's hands and in his team's hands. So we don't have the answer to that question. So sure, maybe the committee didn't see evidence of collusion. I certainly hope there was no collusion. I think we all do. But no one knows the information that Mueller has. So that's a hard thing to talk about. But it is interesting. I mean, he was spicy this morning on Twitter. And
fair.
It was very spicy this morning. And, you know, that only makes me wonder two things. One, is he afraid that something really bad is about to come out? Was he thrown by the questions that were headed his way and how difficult it might be to answer those? I don't know. Or is he trying to deflect to something else? He's not had a particularly good news week. I don't think today is going to be another great day for him with the CNN hearing, which I know Fox signed on to as well. So I think that this also has an equal chance of being a distraction. He's certainly good at projection. It was fascinating to see that at a time when everyone's talking about how he's angry and there's, you know, all this unsettlement in the White House, that's exactly what he's accusing the Mueller team of having right now. So it's interesting to see that level of projection as well.
Emac, how should President Trump and his legal team proceed here?
I think it's really interesting to go ahead with written answers because what you say verbally to an interrogator, especially from the FBI, can be twisted, can be distorted, and can be used against you. It comes back to bite you. So I think it's an interesting choice to do written. I think Mueller's up against the wall. I think he faces a lengthy court fight. He is under pressure to wrap it up. And what's happening now is this: if it's only before the election, it knocks out the obstruction allegations about firing Jim Comey.
Well, Morgan, do written questions protect the president more? Because remember, congressional investigators were concerned that apparently FBI agents said they didn't think Michael Flynn was lying. And then once Robert Mueller took over the special counsel investigation, then he pleads to perjury. So is that the concern for President Trump here? And do written questions protect him from that?
I believe so. I'm not a lawyer, so I want to be careful on how I'm answering this. I do think that what Mueller is trying to avoid is a subpoena, right? I think that he would prefer getting written questions from the president. You know, I'm sure he would probably want him to answer orally, but and the absence of that, I'm sure he'd like written questions because I don't have any suspicion here that Mueller wants some sort of long, drawn-out battle. I think he's actually been sort of cognizant about passing parts of the investigation over, for example, here in New York, to the New York prosecutors. He's been farming it out. So I think that we are still in very much a hurry up and wait mode to where we see what's in this investigation. Part of me wonders, clearly something irritated the president this morning. Part of me wonders if he does this because when the actual probe comes out that there's sort of not much to it. I mean, still after a year and a half of all of this, unless Mueller is the best person in the planet at keeping secrets, we still don't have.
I would give John one more option, that it's a constant marketing campaign that he knows works. The swamp is after me. The swamp is trying to get me. Here comes the witch hunt. So he just keeps the drumbeat on that. And the Twitter machine is half marketing tool and half, sort of impulse control situation. And this is one of the marketing tweets that we'll see today.
All right, well, good conversation, everyone. All right, and President Trump likely to have something to say on the Mueller probe this weekend, so stay tuned for that, I'm sure. He sits down with Chris Wallace for an exclusive interview. Be sure to catch it on Fox News Sunday. Check your local listings for airings on the Fox Broadcast Network, or you can tune in right here on Fox News Channel, 2 p.m. or 7 p.m. Eastern. Also, Democrats may have a new spring in their step after taking the House majority, but now a key member of Hillary Clinton's 2016 campaign team is warning that Democrats face a bigger challenge than they may think in taking on President Trump in 2020. So do they need a new playbook? We're going to discuss that, so stay tuned.
Hillary Clinton's former 2016 campaign press secretary, Brian Fallon, appearing to admit that Clinton's strategy of attacking then-candidate Donald Trump failed. And now Fallon warning that despite Democrats' gains in the midterms, it won't be easy to defeat President Trump in 2020. Saying his controversies and control of the bully pulpit allow him to dominate media coverage. Fallon tweeting, quote, "A nominee best situated to be able to ignore Trump is one who commands a media ecosystem apart from Trump, whose life story is inherently fascinating enough to draw endless human interest stories, whose social media videos in the car or carving flank steak are deemed interesting."
I don't know about that.
There you go. Speaking of flank steak, I'm starving.
Yeah, it sounds delicious.
Sounds actually good right now.
Next week.
Yeah. Here's I tend to agree with some points of what Brian said, but here's, I think, the flaw on the whole argument, thinking that someone else can control a media universe away from Donald Trump. We had an executive from a rival network, just this week that admitted that when they don't cover President Trump, the ratings go down. So I don't know how, whenever all of the next networks are addicted to covering the president, and viewers, Americans are addicted to reading about it, to listening, to reading his tweets, to hearing about him.
Even when they hate him.
Even when they hate him, love him or hate him, it's still addicting. How do you get media attention whenever you're facing the president one-on-one, just given his outside advantage of being able to play the game?
Right. And he's very good at playing the game, as you said. We saw that throughout the campaign. I mean, we'll never forget in 2016 the number of times any of the cable networks would have a camera on an empty podium and we're just waiting for Trump to speak. And it would be like an hour before he would come out and finally speak. So he knows how to control the media. And now, of course, he's got the bully pulpit of the presidency to help him achieve that. But I think, Brian is right in that, we do need someone who is better able to connect with people, who, can talk about the importance of policy and how it impacts people's lives, as opposed to the details of the policy, which is where Democrats tend to go.
Oh, okay. Talk about the Democrat playbook. They don't have a playbook. And I was talking to Dan Henniger at the Wall Street Journal, and he said, President Trump literally blots out the sun. The Democrats can't get in there.
To describe
it is true. And so, you think about it, the Democrats don't have a playbook, what job growth playbook.
Yeah.
They're scratching their heads about how to get their message out. How about come up with the policies that appeal to the American people? And by the way, they used to be the old-time Democrats who did that.
But Melissa, one of the things that Brian said that I agreed with, that I thought he made an interesting point, was about reaching out to independents. And I think when you look at these close House races that flipped, and you talk about suburban women and that sort of thing, I think he has a point that you could find someone that can appeal to the center, but it doesn't look like the energy of the Democrat Party is behind, sensible Sally.
I think that President Trump understood at this pivotal crossover moment that we had seen social media influence and help Barack Obama. And then he came in and it really changed the entire way that we digest political news. And unfortunately, I don't think anyone's ideas are ever going to be the thing that makes the critical difference in the future. Like, you have to have them. You can't live without them, but they're not going to get you there. You need that person who can block out the sun. I
or,
mean, that's,
or the
that's
Democrats
amazing.
come home to themselves. I mean, Teddy Kennedy voted for the 1980 tax cuts. Teddy Kennedy voted for the 87 tax cuts. But so did Chuck Schumer.
But Americans
so
aren't caring about tax cuts. They're looking for cult of personality. I think only somebody like Oprah could come along. And for President Trump, it cuts both ways, though. I mean, he dominates the media attention, but a lot of it's really negative on him. And he claims his good ideas. So I don't know that it always is that positive.
And that's true. And I think it's interesting to hear like Democrats have a sensible Sally. I certainly don't think Donald Trump is someone that a lot of people consider sensible, with even this morning's Twitter rant, as a perfect example. So I think we do have some potentially good candidates who will be able to run. And, people like democratic policies. They like, as we're now seeing with health care, they like the Affordable Care Act. They don't want it to go away. And they're all for middle class tax cuts.
But I think Hillary Clinton taught us how much on a gut level it matters with candidates. And Hillary Clinton's problems are her. She can't be fixed.
More Outnumbered in just a moment. Nice job.